Hello world, Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Darcy here tonight at Frida's place, as promised actually. And what we are looking at here before us now is a animation circa about 1998. I paused it, and that is just an example of a frozen frame that was hand painted as per how they were doing animation at that time. They would have taken a clear film called a cell and painted every frame of this, and in some cases backlit it, so that what looks like light may not be an impression of light, but actual light coming through a film. So some, like my mother before me, a lot of times I will feel very, very creative around midnight. And bringing us back to my living room, I'll sometimes be watching animes and be just absolutely stop and have to just pause and reflect on the amount of detail and work and color that went into this, knowing that the creators of this have said since then they couldn't do this again today. They couldn't get this group of artists back together to do this type of work, to collaborate for that long, for that intense, to this degree. Those people don't exist anymore. And sometimes, so I'll be watching something that's like this, and the lights will be low so that I can just totally absorb all of that beauty, while at the same time I will still have some lights on my bonsai trees. And with this frame of mind, against the backdrop of the patience that it would have taken to have done something like that, I try to bring a careful, artistic flow to the work that I do on my trees then. You know, that's kind of the idea. I try to then incorporate that same patience and care and lack of rush and do the kind of work that I will be representative of the kind of feeling that I would have been placed in by watching something like that, by enjoying something that's inspirationally awesome. So here we are tonight in Frida's place at the Bonsai Balcony, and I have her a few treats doled out, and I also, as I promised in our last show, that I would bring in a few pines to be weeded and worked on and cleaned up a little, and that'll be tonight's show. We have 2, 4, 5, 6 pines. 5 of them are Japanese black pines and a Ponderosa, and the 5 are Mame, and the Ponderosa is a shohen. So this kind of a windswept shohen, I would say. I've had it not quite a year yet, and I'm really enjoying that little tree. The rest of the pines are in various shades of green, from rather yellow to lighter yellow to a really nice green. And that's just kind of a mix of what's going on right now. I've got another one that's about as yellow as this, and it is the one that I got at the bonsai show last year. So I've made a decision to pull that out of this tray. Now, I should maybe even think about that some more and pull them all out of the tray. That was probably more of a summer or fall and all other seasons, except right now they're in the rainy season, which is something I'm just now thinking about it out loud. I'm kind of thinking, I'd given it a little thought earlier, but you know, here's the deal. I was already going to incorporate, because I haven't talked about this lately. I used to have a hard time getting little trees, little bonsai trees to live. It's not easy to get uh, little bonsai trees to live. You learn about bonsai and you learn how much you have to water a medium-sized tree or a large tree, and you kind of get used to that run of things, and you're used to thinking that you don't want to overwater your trees, and then you take on little tiny trees, and if you're got your kind of your rhythm going to how much you need to check, because you can have a rhythm on how often you check. I wouldn't say it's such a great idea to have a rhythm on how much you water, because it's not exactly a matter of rhythm when your trees are going to need watering. So, you know, I don't necessarily know how else to say it, but checking at certain intervals that you've gotten used to as per experience is certainly going to be something that works for you. But when you are just dealing with medium and larger trees, that would totally catch you out with the little ones. These little trees are more susceptible to go dry in between. You're more likely in the fall, the spring, and the summer to have to water your mame and your show hens multiple times a day than you are likely to have to do that to your larger trees. And also, you have to consider the heat, the amount of heat that a tinier pot can take will cause it to harm the smaller tree faster than if it were a larger tree in a larger pot. It's just the way that kind of works against you. And a great cheat against too little water in between, keeping it a little cheat against in between waterings, and a little cheat to help keep the sun from just absolutely baking the heat into that small terracotta pot, or that small unglazed pot, is a tray with some substrate in it. And in the summertime, it doesn't hurt if that's, when you water, it catches into there, it stays in there longer, and your trees will a lot of times send out little roots underneath there, and that will help. That'll help them on those scorching hot days. That's their little insurance policy. We all have our little hacks or cheats in life, whatever our little get us through is. And when it comes to little trees in a big world, a lot of times their escape routes or their little hedge on a really bad outcome, to keep them from getting too dry, too hot, or any of that other stuff, and putting them in a tray with some substrate that can stay moist in the summer is also a great way to keep them from just like absorbing so much heat, and maybe sitting on something that reflects heat right back onto the pot, so that thing just gets skillet hot and fries the roots. So once I didn't really think of it that way. I had just heard that if I took drip trays and put substrate in them and put my pots in that if the holes had substrate coming close to them, that there would be escape routes, and that would hedge your success rate. And I noticed that the moment I tried it. And so I'm just now seeing that probably this year, like last year, the kind of rain we had, I should probably abandon these in the rainier parts of the year. Another tray I have that I was noticing that with, and instead of just pulling it out, which I'm thinking more and more about now, I had just ran a wick from there to a watering can that I'm not using. So whenever this thing has standing water in it, it would actually have a piece of cotton line that was going from here, hanging down like a siphon right into a watering can. And when when this tray would get too much water or too much it would soak up in that cotton line and then just siphon right on down into the can. But I don't really think I probably just need to pull those out. I think for the most part, most of the trees are doing okay, but I do have 2 or 3 this year that are rather yellow. One of them, like I said, was the tree that that I picked up at the Bonsai Expo, and it's a tree that came from a San Francisco grower who also has bonsai shows, Eric, at Bonsai, and he gives lessons and he does shows, goes to bonsai shows and does the lecture stuff, and also has a store. So they do trees and pots and probably in I think tools or something. I haven't seen their site in a while, but I do like some of the pots that I've seen there. Anyway, some of the I got one of my trees from him, and I'll go more into that later. This little guy, hopefully I'm in the show okay. Yes, this little guy we got in one of our original orders of 10, and it came from Florida through the mail, and by the time it got to us, that little order looked pretty ratty, and our order of 10 was an order of 9, but look at this tiny little thing. This is already its second wiring. I cut it out of its first wiring, and we are watching it recover from that. The second round of wires seems to be holding its shape pretty good. It's doing pretty much all right. We got a little bit of a candle or a bud showing there where we're committed to next year. It's currently dry, so it's one of the ones that hasn't been overwatered lately. I could probably do a little wipe down of this guy while I've got it. This is I didn't even add anything to this. I have added, this is my oily rag, my beloved oily rag. It's a cotton t-shirt type material. It was always a rag, but it was like when you buy rags and sometimes there's shredded t-shirts. That's what this was. And it's loaded with baby oil. I have loaded it with baby oil so many times that I just thought, you don't probably have to add it every time. It looks absolutely well coated when I touch anything with it that's dry. So see how that's doing. You can probably see that I'm managing to dump a little bit of substrate out. But this is one of Elizabeth Pretendon's pots from the UK, and this little tree is doing really well in this little pot. I think they're a good pair. I was showing earlier where I had a tree or two in regular terracotta pots, small terracotta pots, and that's kind of conventional. We're growing a lot of roots, and we're trying to get big trunks and all that stuff. This is another one of Elizabeth's pots, and this little guy's got a lot of clover. What you're looking at is where I just basically took the tree with its plug, as it were, and what I'm got my thumb on currently is that plug. I am trying to make sure I don't mess with it while I pull out a lump of roots by the roots, a lump of clover by the roots, as if it were a bad tooth. That's about what that felt like. I'm gonna leave this. I've got my little lumps of biogold over here off to the side. 4. All right, 5. There. That tree I think is doing pretty well. Uh, golly, I 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 strands of wire I put on there to do all of that, and I did 4 because they don't all go to the end. That tells me that I did that at 2 different times. Um, they're digging in a little at the bottom. I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna let that go because they're not digging in anywhere else. Down here they are. Whenever I have to start dealing with this up here and this up here, I'll cut it all loose. That's kind of my idea there. But this is a pretty happy little tree. It's got some really good color. A lot of some of what looks like needles that I need to pull off is actually my copper wire on there. That's copper wire. That's a little strand of copper wire. I'm like, I can pull and cut that. And I'm like, yeah, you can just leave that alone. You might need that later. I'm inconspicuously hiding this piece of copper wire here in case the thing grows out there. I won't have to tie that in. It's just waiting. A little bit of cleanup, not a whole lot. I mostly got a lot of clover out of here. Here's still some more. Out with you. Golly, that was the little clover that could right there. But yeah, look at that. Our Cheerios. I've got, like, there's going to be ways that you can turn this tree and you'll be able to see all those little twists and turns and curves. I think as time goes on, I'm going to like this. I wasn't, it felt like a risk. It felt like a risk when I was doing it. I thought, are you going to think this is the corniest thing ever in a couple of years? But I have seen trees that were farther along that were done this way, and I like them. I think the way we went about this will sort of hold true. This is something that nature does do. Not all the time, mind you, but this is something that nature does do. And we were all about our canyon trees, and this is our interpretation, our artistic interpretation of our canyon trees. Needles are so long on this guy. So, after we replanted it in this little pot, things started going really well. As this breaks down, we'll have more and more of these exposed roots from here to here showing. And it doesn't have a lot of escape roots. I may not remember. I may have already cut some escape roots back on this guy in the summer. But thumbs up. It looks like it's doing pretty well. So you can see the new growth, dead center, kind of popping out of there. It's a little pale, but not overall. It's got pretty good winter color. I would say it's got good winter color. We're gonna give this a little bit of our baby oil treatment, or oil of baby. Yeah, oil of baby. And this is, I think I already said that, this is another one of Elizabeth's pot. It's got this, it's got a nice ring at the top. It's got a really nice band. Got a nice band at the top here. It's got an equally balanced band at the bottom. The lines on them are just absolutely spot on and straight. And then in between, it's got this carving in it. And her eye for detail is just so good. I kind of, when it comes to the part that's hand carved, I want to get both of these bands, top and bottom, and the feet really good and clean. And when it comes to the carved part that she hand carved, I kind of want to wipe off the top, but not go too deep. Uh, you know, that little bit of contrast in color, where if I don't leave it like wet looking all the way down, I think otherwise it's not showing off as much the details in her work. How are we looking? Am I in the movie here? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I believe tomorrow's project will be to take up these guys and set them off to the side for now. They are absolutely the thing that got me going as far as trying to get tiny little trees to stay alive and not. This proved to be the difference. However, with all the rain we've been having, they're I would say they're now tolerating it. Yeah. Or in some cases less so. Love this little tree. This is one of our original batch that came in underfed, undersized, undernumbered, kind of like what they say out. This was the outnumbered, outgunned batch that came from Florida, but it always had great color. Right now, it's looking very yellow. I had already made a decision that it was going to go on tray restriction and just allowed to dry out next to my other tree. It doesn't have a lot of clover in it currently. I might have uh, I might have already pulled some out when I was looking at this tree earlier. It looks pretty yellow. I'm not gonna lie. It's got yellow, a different band of yellow from here to here, which is heat burn. But other than that, it is still putting out new green. So We're just gonna go with that. We don't. I don't think it's done. I hope not. It's been a nice little tree, and it looks really good in this little pot. Uh, yeah. I don't have. I don't feel strongly that we're about to lose this thing. I think it could certainly be a little greener, but between what we've been going through the last part of the summer, uh, actually the fall, uh, we should be just about out of that. However, having said that, I don't want to. I don't. I want to let it. I want to be sure and let this guy dry out, and then we'll give this. And uh, yeah, it's got some good moss there going. It's got really, really, really good motion coming out of the ground. We've got our spirals in there. I think the tree has really good. The little tree has good movement throughout. I believe this is another one of. Yeah, this is another one of Eric's pots, I believe. So, yeah, well, they're all going in drier territory now. Not a bad idea. This guy. This is another one. This is another one of Elizabeth's pots, and this is a slightly bigger little Japanese black pine. It came in a separate order. these came from Oregon, Washington, I forget, somewhere north of us here in the Bay of California, the Bay Area. But they were absolutely beautiful lot of trees, and I got 10 out of 10, and I think out of that 10, we have most of those are still doing really well. We'll take this guy, and this guy down. Roots. The wiring, comes out of the ground right here. That's a root. I don't think I'm gonna have a whole lot of trouble freeing this tree up when it comes time to do that. I believe I'm gonna be able to cut that wire out of there easy enough. There are, and I put it that way because there are a couple that I'm looking at and I'm going, the tree has eaten that wire in a way right now that I am actually pretty happy with. And if I try to pull that out of there, I may wreck the whole tree. So it's already eating it. We're just gonna let it go ahead and swallow it and go. And it was pretty much kind of a matter of decision. I saw it coming to that point and going, yeah, I think we're gonna let this one just see what happens if it consumes that wire. And so far, I gotta say I'm very happy with the results. Looks like heat damage. Like half a needle is just toast at the top. You missed it, Pat. You're about to miss it again. Frida and I hung out all day, and we really enjoyed this weather. This winter has been a little rainy, and when I first moved out here, we were in the middle of a dry spell. It was kind of droughty, and it got to the point to where on days that it rained, it was almost like snow events back in Texas. Everybody would go, "Oh, it's raining," and go run to the windows. That looks a little better already, quite a bit better already. So we just kind of folded that guy up on top of itself. The moss is coming in on there. It looks really nice. Most of these guys that have good color are the ones that I planted in my boon mix, and the ones that I have been having the most problems with are the ones that somebody else potted up, and I'm trying to maintain their substrate, which causes me to overwater it. That's just exactly what I just kind of said. I'm not saying anything about them because they've been at this a long time, and what they did worked well for them. No doubt that what they did worked well for them. I've known several growers who grow pines and just pretty much go with straight akadama, and I thought, luxury item. If you want to splurge on something that you love, then tank it up with the akadama. And I've been finding out, other people were going, I didn't have as good a luck with that, and I'm like, is that because you know better, or is that because uh, you're trying to save money? And I'm just trying to figure out to what extent something is 100% true, 75% true, 40% true, or totally untrue. So, in what I found is that I love akadama, and I absolutely know the benefits of it. It helps with root refinement when you're ready for that. Um, Finer roots make finer branches and stuff. It's kind of a theory there, but the people that I know that use that are growers who also sell that, and their uh, methods, their commercial methods, are different than my hang out at the house hobby method. It's also um, maybe being a full-time bonsai person means that you're in your garden more. I have to like blow this place off 3 or 4 days a week and go do my day job. So for that reason, I haven't been able to find that happy medium with trees that are planted solely in akadama, and that is coming from a person who wanted to copy my teachers who were doing that. I found that I found it easier to find my balance when it came to these trees, when it came to Japanese black pines and not overwatered Japanese black pines. It's a little easier for me to find my balance, you know, all the while I'm showing you trees that are not really well balanced. Um, as soon as I went to Boone Mix, that pretty much took out some of my problems. So if you yourself are having some issue, they might not be similar to the ones I'm having, but some of that may also sound familiar to you. The opposite problem would probably look and sound like that, underwater. Uh, Somebody else was, this guy, when a little while back, the bonsai creators, YouTube creators, kind of issued a challenge. It was the $50 challenge, and the idea was to come up with a pot and substrate and tree for less than $50. Some people said the tree and pot from the same place. Some people, I don't think everybody played by that, but I heard that at some point. Uh, I did that, but it was pretty easy for me. At that time, I was also recovering. From a stay in the hospital. So I was pretty much confined to the house for a couple of weeks, and I decided to take part in the challenge. So I went to the internet and I ordered this little pine tree. It was in a cup, in a little seedling cup, and it had a piece of wire on it. It was about 2/3 taller than what you see now, and it was in a cup about yay big, and was probably about that big, and was S-shaped. I mean, was spiral shaped, and it had great movement coming right out of the ground. Really, really good movement coming out of the ground. I remember being more impressed, being really impressed by that. And also, it kind of is one of those things where I went back and started looking at the first couple of trees that I had, and I thought, well, these could have come out of the ground with much better movement than what they have. The tree stops here, and everything below that is like roots. That it's the when he wired this tree up, the bottom part, the nabari, was just roots fanning out. So fantastic start on this from Eric Trey again. So I bought this pot from him, and I bought this little starter Japanese black pine from him. And the substrate is the substrate. No, it's not the substrate that it came with. It was some that I already had, which makes it boom. What this guy was in I think, straight vermiculite. But I then crunched it down really small and put some more twists upon it, and then cut about 2/3 of it off, making it this tree, which I have dubbed Buck 50 in honor of our $50 challenge. And unlike the other trees, it's managed to do pretty well. Its color is kind of light green compared to what it normally is. It's a little yellow for it even, but I think it's doing fine. And it didn't have a lot of weeds on it. I don't see a lot of stuff on here that I want to pull off. It's got a little. This is a thick, kind of a wabi-sabi looking little pot. I think they both go pretty well together. Right quick. I didn't realize how far over that was. Where are you going? I'm going over here. There you go, Frida. All right, so now quick squeak, pan back. There we go. Now that leaves us with that Ponderosa there. This guy. Let's make way. Ponderosa pine from Deadwood, South Dakota. 5,000 something feet, I believe, was where all these guys came from. I ordered this from Arrowhead, or Golden Arrow Bonsai. And it's got quite a bit of weeding. Also, repotted this tree. When we got this tree, the pot did not survive shipping. Color was good on the tree. It got here really quick. The weather, I don't think was anything to worry about between us and where the tree came from. You can't always go by that. A truck, you know, slowly driving from here from parts unknown can get incredibly hot, even if the ambient isn't so much. So I was pretty happy with the condition this guy came in, except the pot had a crack in it. So I took this this is kind of a generic brown Japanese unglazed pot, but I always kind of liked it. It's not a definitely not a designer pot, but not an oval. It is a little round dish shaped bonsai pot. And so I up-potted it into this guy, and it seems to be pretty happy. Also, as does the clover. Growing a lot of clover, but it's not growing a lot of moss. I think it's good that it's not growing a lot of moss. What I said about overwatering and not wanting to overwater black pines goes double for Ponderosas. You do not want to overwater those guys. And I find myself wondering if a Ponderosa had healthy moss growing on it. Does that mean that it's being overwatered? That's just something I'm kind of looking at when it comes to other people's trees, you know? Does that have planted moss on it for presentation? Or is that the moss that's been in there for a while? And does it look like it's happy where it is? I'm just kind of observing that. When I had one that was getting overwatered because of the amount of rain that we had last year, which was more than we've had in like a million years. Literally, last year brought back extinct lakes in California. There were lakes that had been dry beds for so long, they had become neighborhoods. And now they're lakes again. And that's just the way that goes. They're like, yeah, I know. So with that much rain last year, I had noticed not too long before I began to notice bad things about that Ponderosa. That the moss was starting to look good on it. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a sign that it's too wet, because if you've got happy moss on this thing, you know, would seem to me that the moss would be happier with a wet substrate, and the Ponderosa is not supposed to be that as much. It was supposed to be drier. I don't know. There might be a moss. Might have been that might have been the moss it came with, and in which case that stuff's perfectly happy. Growing with even a proper amount of Ponderosa moisture. Not really sure. Just something, like I said, something I've been wondering about. You can see we've got a good amount of escape roots coming from this guy. It is in a windswept shape. I wired these branches. I put curls and spins and swirls, and I pretty much got away. When it came to this tree, I pretty much got away with everything I tried to do, except I thought it was a wide tree, and there was a couple of branches that I would have liked to have pulled in more. And when I found that difficult, I cut them. I was like, this thing, it looks more like an elk, because it was so wide. It was just so wide out there. There went my Olympic goat. Okay. Pull off the rest of these before I drop them out. I've almost got this little guy weeded. I had someone tell me that Ponderosas need something like more or less pretty close to 36 hours of right around below freezing a year to reset. If they don't get that, they won't shut off properly, and the lack of that will cause them to kind of run themselves into the ground. They will flourish for a few years, and then they'll die for lack of a nap, lack of a proper dormancy. So that is why my large Ponderosa has been shipped upstate, and I am going to put this in a cooler a little later in the month, a little closer into February. I intend to put this guy in a cooler where I can, during the cool of the day, I can just let it absorb the cool of the day, and then after that at night, I can bring the temperatures down to close to freezing again in the cooler. And I will also try to, while at the same time, I will also keep the pot from freezing. You know, I'll insulate it a little, and we'll bring that down to a temperature that will be of our choosing, so that it won't be too much or something. And we'll try to get our dormancy that way. I'll just, you know, do that for a couple of weeks and nights between now and spring, and we'll just see if we can't make our dormancy that way. I had somebody say, no, you can only do it, just put a light in there with them. Well, I'm not talking about doing that during the day. Our days do go down into the 50s, sometimes, in the 50s, and I can go from that into the 40s or 30s by going into an ice box. So for 6 or 7 hours until sunup, right, and then they back out you go, and they would start coming back up. I think that would work. I mean, I might be totally wrong. Could be, but when I asked, I was told that would work, and I wasn't so sure. And whereas that method wouldn't lend itself to a huge tree like my big Ponderosa, I can totally see me in a couple of weeks putting this little guy in a cooler on ice and bringing the temperatures down to what we want them to be, and going with that. And this is another tree that will probably be glad to get out of the same substrate that it liked. You know, these trees in particular, it's kind of a thing that Ponderosas do. So this tree, its natural habitat is a pretty harsh environment, but that's not because it loves things that just basically suck. It's because it can survive a shallow earth, rocky environment where it'll just send out a root down into a crack and start trying to hang on to a little moisture when it gets some for a little while later that it can fall back on, and its roots closer to the ground, closer to the top, can also close their pores so that they don't give up their last bit of moisture when the ground is drier than they are. And then farther down, where they have that little escape route running along a crack that they started in, you know, in a rock or something, that'll be their little hedge against environment. And at the same time, we have an issue that it, like I've already hinted to, it will not get cold enough necessarily for these guys where I live, because they're used to being several thousand feet up. But at the same time, they have a really tiny growing season too, 4 months out of the year. But during that 4 months, they're still at some really high elevation, and those temperatures can be scorching. So not only does my Alameda home not get cold enough, it also does not get hot enough. So between the two, we can find ourselves in pretty much all of those situations. In the end, I want to find out if I want to find out whether or not I can get away with this cooler idea. And also, my larger my larger Ponderosa that is farther upstate currently. That guy will start this year somehow, Operation Somehow. It'll start getting some Japanese black pine grafted onto it in what will be a several year process to get that guy off and running. You start putting Japanese black pine on it. Like if it were this tree, if I could go back here closer to where these branches are, that would allow me to cut some of these ends back when I had Japanese black pine growing here or here or here. And then you just start flanking all of your limbs like that. And then at some point you're going to have a tree growing with both types of buds and with both types of foliage. And that foliage reacts differently. The root mass on Ponderosa, I am told, will respond very well to Japanese black pine foliage. And the foliage on Japanese black pine more makes oxygen available to the moisture in the needles more readily. It's more porous. Whereas the Ponderosa needles, one, they don't stop growing until they're dead. Ponderosa needles don't so much have a season, and if they come out, they start growing, and then they just keep on growing. That's just kind of what they do. So, but they also have some tricks they can play. They can shut up their pores so that they're not giving up all of their moisture, which is what they do to try to hedge themselves in survival. It also makes it hard to get small needles on this tree. And in order to get smaller needles on a tree, you go about a whole totally different process than you would with needle reduction and bud selecting and cutting your buds back and spring and all of that stuff that we do on the black pines. So at some point, I may start grafting black pine onto this little pondo as well. But right now, we're letting it and our 9 other little pondos that we ordered last year that are either in seedling cups, or they are in terracotta pots, or there's a couple in bonsai pots. We're letting those guys come along, and we're going to experiment with those, and we're going to decorate with those, and we're going to learn what we can get away with those in the similar way that we did our Japanese black pines. One thing I've already found out in a couple of little Ponderosas that I have that have some age to them is they don't always respond well to my shenanigans when it comes to bending and folding. They will lose branches more and probably need to, whenever you get cracks in those things, I've lost branches on Ponderosas where I only saw just a tiny little crack, and maybe going through there and going through with a little bonsai putty or something, you know, a little cut paste in there, might have gone a long way on those guys. So the opposite of that would be this tree. I folded that guy up like a circus balloon. What I couldn't do was get some bends out of this heavier branch here. I tried to bend that heavier branch with the amount of wire it had on it, and that wasn't enough wire to keep it to hold its shape. So I added another wire to that and then tried to do that bend again, only to discover that I had coiled so much wire in there that I couldn't get a bend in there to make the shape that I originally wanted to do anyway. So what I did was I just bent everybody else more and cut I cut down the tree a little so that it wasn't as wide as an elk, and you know, I didn't really want a show hand that took up my entire bench. So yeah, that's got us. That's a little cleanup tonight. I'm pretty happy with the way everybody looks. I don't see anybody here that I feel like I'm worried about. I'm looking your way. Don't let me down. I think everybody here is in a pretty good place, and they all look a little cleaner and look pretty good. So yeah, like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Tomorrow we'll go out in whatever it is we have coming our way weather-wise. I'm not really sure what tomorrow looks like. I forgot to look. We're in and out of this weather for you know, for a minute. That's Pat for it's going to be a minute. To look at it on the weather radar, there's just like little swirling paths between. They're just stacked up like buses between here and Japan. So yeah, we're getting. It looks like, in a way, same thing that happened last year. I'm looking there and I'm going, wow, all those guys that I'm watching on video, they're all getting the same weather that we're getting. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.